The distress signal was textbook, a desperate plea from a stranded freighter, but the predatory species hiding in the asteroid belt made a fatal miscalculation. They set a trap for easy prey, completely unaware that the responders hailed from a death world. The hunters were about to become the hunted. Deep space is defined by its overwhelming, crushing silence. For the crew of the United Systems heavy salvage hauler Goliath, that silence was an expensive commodity. Registered to Redwood Stellar Freight, the Goliath was a brutalist wedge of titanium and a blade of ceramic, currently hauling 3 million tons of refined palladium from the Kepler sector back to the solar system. It was a 6-month burn. The work was tedious. The corporate oversight was stifling, and the coffee tasted like recycled copper wire. Captain David Miller sat in the command chair, staring at the optical displays with heavy, sleep-deprived eyes. Miller was a veteran of the Jovian mining colonies, a man carved from years of high-gravity labor and strict adherence to protocol. The bridge of the Goliath was a symphony of low hums and flashing amber diodes, smelling faintly of ozone and stale sweat. "Captain, I'm getting an anomaly on the wideband receiver," Communications Officer Amanda Lewis called out, breaking the 3-hour silence that had settled over the command deck. Her fingers danced rapidly across the haptic interface. "It's a repeating burst, encrypted, but the carrier wave is broadcast on the standard civilian emergency frequency." Miller sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Let's hear it, Lewis. Put it on the main speakers." A burst of heavy static hissed through the bridge, followed by a synthetic, panicked voice. "Mayday, Mayday. This is the civilian transport vessel Horizon. We have suffered a catastrophic reactor failure. Life support is dropping. We have 94 souls aboard, requesting immediate assistance." "Mayday, Mayday." The message looped, the static washing over the final syllable before starting again. "Triangulate the origin," Miller ordered, his posture straightening. Corporate policy heavily discouraged deviating from the plotted flight path, but the Geneva Tau Accords, the oldest maritime laws translated for deep space, mandated that any vessel capable of rendering aid must do so. Failing to answer a legitimate distress call meant losing his captain's license and facing a military tribunal. Navigation Officer Brian Foster swiped a topographical star map onto the central hollow table. "Origin point is in the Perseus Arm, specifically an uncharted debris field near a rogue gas giant. It's out of our way, Captain. A 3-day detour at maximum sublight. 94 souls, Foster." "We don't have a choice," Miller said, his voice carrying the immovable weight of command. "Spool up the hyperdrives, Lewis. Send a tight beam ping acknowledging their signal. Tell them the Goliath is en route." "Sending now," Lewis replied, though she frowned slightly at her console. "Sir, there's something odd about the telemetry packet attached to the SOS. Define odd." "The audio sounds panicked, but the telemetry is perfectly stable. The broadcast intervals are exactly 1.2 seconds apart down to the microcond. In a real reactor crisis, power fluctuations usually cause transmission stutters. This is perfectly clean. Too clean." Miller walked over to her station, leaning over her shoulder to inspect the waveform. She was right. It was a pristine digital loop. Could be an automated beacon that deployed before the ship's primary systems failed. "Keep an eye on it. Foster, initiate the jump sequence on my mark. Drive spun to 90%. Calculations locked." Foster confirmed. "Mark." The Goliath shuddered as the massive Farnsworth hyperdrives tore a temporary hole in the fabric of spacetime, violently shoving the 3-million-ton vessel through the breach. For the next several hours, the crew prepared for a mass casualty rescue. Chief Engineer Rebecca Shaw prepped the medical bay and unlocked the emergency thermal blankets, oxygen scrubbers, and trauma kits. When the ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the transition was jarring. The starfield snapped back into place, revealing a dense, treacherous asteroid field caught in the gravitational pull of a massive swirling purple gas giant. "Scanners are blind in this soup," Foster muttered, his hands flying across the navigation terminal to deploy localized thrusters. "Magnetic interference from the planet is scrambling our deep-range sensors." Switching to optical. On the main viewer, the jagged silhouettes of massive asteroids tumbled in the darkness. And there, pinned against the largest rock, was a ship. It matched the registry profile of a standard civilian transport. "There she is, the horizon," Lewis said softly. But as the Goliath drifted closer, the grim reality of the situation painted a different picture. Miller stared at the optical feed, his jaw tightening. "Hold our approach," Miller commanded sharply. "Foster, cut main engines. Bring us to a dead stop. Keep us behind this nearest asteroid." "Stopping. What's wrong, Captain? Look at the hull." Miller pointed to the magnified image. "Lewis, you said they reported a reactor failure." "Yes, sir. Catastrophic. Reactor failures cause outward explosive decompression. The whole plates bow outward. Look at the horizon. The damage is entirely external. Those are concentrated plasma scorches." The ship was sliced open from the outside. A chilling silence fell over the bridge. Down in the engineering bay, Rebecca Shaw's voice suddenly crackled over the intercom. "Captain Miller, you need to see this. I'm running a passive thermal scan of the surrounding debris field. The Horizon's reactor isn't dead. It's completely cold. It's been dead for weeks, maybe months, but I'm picking up a massive thermal bloom hiding in the radar shadow of the asteroid directly above us." Miller's blood ran cold. The pristine distress signal, the external damage, the hidden thermal signature. "It wasn't a rescue mission. It's a lure," Miller whispered. "Snorts Lewis, cut all communications. Foster, reverse engines. Get us out of here." Before Foster could engage the thrusters, the bridge was bathed in blinding red light. The proximity alarm screamed. From the shadow of the massive asteroid, a sleek, jagged silhouette emerged. It was a vessel unlike anything in the United Systems database. Built from a pitch-black, light-absorbing alloy, completely devoid of exhaust plumes. It moved with terrifying predatory silence. "Energy spike detected," Lewis yelled over the sirens. "They're locking onto us." "Evasive maneuvers," Miller roared. But it was too late. The Goliath was a cargo hauler, not a warship. The black vessel fired 4 massive physical harpoons, trailing thick hypertensile cables. The harpoons slammed into the dense outer armor of the Goliath, biting deep into the titanium hull. The sound of metal groaning and buckling echoed through the entire ship. "Hull breach on deck 4, cargo bay 3, Foster shouted, desperately trying to stabilize the rolling ship. "They're reeling us in." Miller hit the shipwide intercom, his voice losing any trace of its former calm. "All hands, this is the captain. Repel boarders, I repeat. Repel boarders. Lock down all bulkheads. Security Chief Gallagher. Get your men to deck 4 immediately. We are under attack." The hunters had sprung their trap. But as the cables pulled the two ships together, the unseen aliens had no idea what kind of prey they had just dragged out of the dark. Aboard the Vitari stealth raider Nightfang, Subcommander Kalin watched the optical screens with eager clicking mandibles. The Vitari were an apex species, a terror across the Orion Spur, towering for armed bipedal predators covered in a hardened obsidian chitin. They had evolved in the low-gravity, high-lethality jungles of their home world. To them, the galaxy was a hunting ground, and other species were merely sustenance or slaves. Their strategy was flawless. Salvage a distress beacon from a conquered civilian ship, broadcast it in a hydraulic lane, and wait in the shadows. The ships that answered were always the same. Soft, altruistic species, frightened technicians and diplomats whose fragile bones snapped under minimal pressure. "Prey vessel secured," hissed the tactical officer, his secondary arms tapping the boarding console. "Atmospheric scan complete. High oxygen, high nitrogen. Gravity is currently set to standard planetary norm. They are heavy breathers, soft tissues." Kalin unholstered his plasma cleaver, the weapon humming with superheated violet energy. "Excellent. Engage the boarding sequence. We breach their cargo bay, disable their engineering core, and slaughter the command crew. Leave the rest alive for the feeding pens. Glory to the hunt. Glory to the hunt," his strike team echoed. A chorus of clicking mandibles and low growls. The Vitari boarding tube clamped violently onto the exterior airlock of the Goliath's cargo bay. 3 high-intensity plasma torches sheared through the human vessel's outer hatch. In a matter of seconds, the heavy metal doors blew inward with a deafening screech, allowing Kalin and 20 heavily armed Vitari warriors to pour into the dark, expansive cavern of the human cargo bay. Inside the Goliath, Captain Miller was watching the security feeds from the bridge. His face was a mask of cold fury. He watched the towering four-armed monstrosities enter his ship. They moved with terrifying speed, bounding across the deck like predatory insect. They breached Bay 3, Miller said into his comms. Gallagher, what is your status? Down on Deck 4, Security Chief Thomas Gallagher stood behind a barricade of reinforced shipping containers. Gallagher wasn't military. None of his men were. They were asteroid miners, deep space riggers, and orbital mechanics. But out in the black, you protected what was yours. We're in position, Captain, Gallagher grunted, racking a heavy industrial rivet gun. HFY weapon was designed to fire fist-sized titanium slugs into starship hull plating at Mach 2. It wasn't designed for combat, but physics didn't care about design. Behind him, a dozen crew members held plasma cutters, high-torque hydraulic shears, and heavy mining lasers. Let them get halfway into the bay, Miller ordered. Then I'm changing the environment. Brace yourselves. In the cargo bay, Kalen signaled his warriors to spread out. The room was oddly quiet. There were no screaming civilians, no panicking guards firing weak energy pistols, just the hum of the ship's life support spread out. Find the access corridors, Kalen commanded in his native tongue. They are hiding. As the Vitari reached the center of the bay, the overhead lights suddenly slammed on, bathing the aliens in blinding, harsh fluorescent light. Before Kalen could adjust his secondary eyes, a blaring klaxon echoed through the room. Up on the bridge, Miller slammed his hand onto the environmental control override. Maximizing gravity plating to 1.5 Earth standard, Miller stated coldly. In a fraction of a second, the artificial gravity in Cargo Bay 3 spiked. For the humans, a species that evolved on a high-gravity deathworld 1, 5GS was heavy, uncomfortable, and exhausting over long periods, but completely manageable for the Vitari, whose biology was optimized for low-gravity leaping and speed. It was a catastrophic physical event. Kalen felt an invisible, crushing weight slam into his shoulders. His knees buckled, his chitinous exoskeleton groaning under the sudden immense strain. Several of his warriors collapsed to the deck, their internal organs sagging violently against their rib cages, gasping for breath as the dense air suddenly felt like liquid lead. What is this magic? Kalen wheezed, struggling to keep his plasma cleaver raised. Movement dampeners. They have deployed a crushing field. It's not a field, you ugly bastards. A deep voice echoed from the far end of the bay. Kalen forced his head up to see the barricade. A group of short, densely packed bipeds stood there. They weren't wearing sleek armor or kinetic energy shields. They wore heavy-stained canvas overalls and bulky hazard yellow mining rigs. Light them up, Gallagher ordered. The humans opened fire. The Vitari relied on advanced kinetic displacement shields. In galactic warfare, everyone used directed energy weapons, lasers, plasma bolts, ion beams. The Vitari shields were designed to disperse thermal energy across a wide surface area. But Thomas Gallagher wasn't firing thermal energy. He squeezed the trigger of his rivet gun. Thump, thump, thump. The heavy titanium rivets crossed the cargo bay in the blink of an eye. The first slug slammed into a Vitari warrior's chest. The alien's energy shield flashed, attempting to disperse the heat. But there was no heat, just sheer unadulterated mass moving at horrific velocity. The rivet shattered the alien shield, punched clean through its supposedly impervious kitten armor, and exited its back in a shower of blue blood. The warrior was dead before it hit the floor. By the void, Kalen roared, trying to leap for cover, but his muscles screamed under the Earth's standard gravity. A leap that would have carried him 30 feet forward barely moved him 3. The human crew advanced, moving with terrifying ease under the crushing gravity. A mechanic named Henderson swung a heavy hydraulic boarding axe, severing a Vitari warrior's primary arm right through its armor. Another crewman leveled a Highward rockcracker laser. Unlike military lasers that fired quick bursts, the mining tool fired a continuous, blindingly bright beam meant to melt iron or asteroids. He swept the beam across the Vitari line, instantly superheating their carapaces and boiling them alive inside their own armor. Panic, an emotion entirely foreign to the Vitari hunting caste, seized Kalen's mind. These weren't prey. They were kinetic nightmares. Their bodies were built like solid rock, and their weapons bypassed all known defensive technology through sheer primitive brutality. "Fall back," Kalen shrieked, his voice cracking. "Back to the airlock. Sever the umbilical." "Not today," Gallagher growled. He keyed his radio. Shaw, now in the engineering deck, Rebecca Shaw grinned, overriding the airlock controls. The heavy blast doors of Cargo Bay 3 slammed shut, sealing the breach point and trapping the remaining Vitari inside. Kalen slammed his plasma cleaver against the reinforced steel, but the dense human-forged titanium didn't even scorch. He turned around, his chest heaving to face the advancing line of humans. Gallagher stepped forward, racking another titanium rivet into the chamber of his heavy gun. "You picked the wrong ship to board," Gallagher said, leveling the massive weapon at the Vitari commander's head. "Welcome to human space." The heavy titanium slug from Thomas Gallagher's rivet gun did not kill Subcommander Kalen. Instead, it shattered the Vitari war. Rear's secondary right shoulder, spinning the massive alien around and slamming him into the cold steel deck. The remaining Vitari in Cargo Bay 3, stripped of their momentum and crushed under the agonizing weight of Earth's standard gravity, threw down their weapons. For an apex predatory species that had never known defeat, surrender was a deeply unnatural instinct, but survival overrode their pride. They lay gasping on the floor, their chitinous armor clicking weakly against the grated deck plates. Gallagher kept his weapon trained on Kalen, his breathing heavy but controlled inside his reinforced hazard suit. "Henderson, zip-tie their arms. Use the heavy-duty industrial polymers, the ones we use for securing palladium crate. I don't want these ugly bastards twitching." Up on the command deck of the Goliath, Captain David Miller did not have time to celebrate the localized victory. The tactical alarms on Amanda Lewis's console suddenly shifted from a rhythmic pulse to a frantic, high-pitched scream. "Captain, the alien vessel is experiencing a massive energy spike," Lewis reported, her hands flying over her haptic displays. "They're rerouting power from their stealth drives to a forward-mounted thermal projector. It's a directed plasma weapon, and they are painting our main reactor." Miller gripped the armrests of his chair. "Foster, disengage those harpoons. Blow the explosive bolts on the hull armor if you have to. We need to break the tether." "I'm trying, sir," Brian Foster yelled, his terminal flashing with critical error warnings. "It's not working. Chief Shaw's telemetry from engineering says the harpoons deployed a smart slag chemical compound upon impact. It's fused their cables directly into our primary structural bulkheads. If we blow the armor, we'll rip out our own life support mains. We are physically welded to them." Miller's mind raced. The Goliath had no offensive weaponry. Their defensive shields were designed to deflect micrometeorites, not military-grade plasma cannons. If the alien ship fired, the cargo hauler would be vaporized instantly. "How long until that weapon reaches critical charge?" Miller demanded. 3 minutes, maybe less," Lewis replied, her voice trembling slightly. Miller hit the shipwide intercom. "Gallagher, this is the bridge. The enemy vessel is charging a main gun. We cannot detach the umbilicals. I need you to cross that boarding tube and disable their weapon systems from the inside." Right now, down in Cargo Bay 3, Gallagher keyed his radio. "Understood, Captain, we're going on the offensive." He turned to his makeshift strike team of mechanics and riggers. "You heard the boss. Henderson, Ramirez, O'Connor, you're with me. The rest of you guard these prisoners. If they sneeze, weld their helmets shut. Chief, we don't have military armor." Ramirez pointed out, his grip tightening on a heavy rotary saw. "We step onto that ship. We're walking into a shooting gallery. We don't need military armor," Gallagher growled, walking over to the equipment locker at the far end of the bay. He slammed his palm against the biometric lock. The heavy doors slid open to reveal 4 bulky hazard yellow mechanical exo-suits. They were Caterpillar Mark V cargo loaders, hydraulically assisted exo frames designed to lift 20-ton shipping containers in zero gravity. They were built from hardened industrial steel, powered by microfusion cells, and completely enclosed to protect operators from hard vacuum and radiation. "Suit up," Gallagher ordered. "They want to play rough. Let's show them what human engineering looks like." Within 60 seconds, the four men were strapped into the caterpillar suits. The hydraulic servos whined as Gallagher took a heavy thudding step forward. He swapped his rivet gun for a DeWalt high-output plasma torch, a tool normally used to slice through dreadnought-class salvage wrecks. The team stomped into the Vitari boarding tube. The passage was dark, lined with organic-looking conduits and jagged metallic ridges. As they crossed the threshold from the Goliath into the alien raider, the Night Fang, the gravitational shift was instantaneous. "Whoa!" O'Connor muttered over the tactical comms, his caterpillar suit stumbling slightly. "Gravity just dropped out. Internal sensors indicate 0.4 GS." Henderson read off his heads-up display. "The air mix is thin, too, barely enough oxygen to keep a rat alive." "They're a low-gravity species," Gallagher realized, a grim smile spreading across his face beneath his visor. "That's why they folded so fast on our ship. To them, we're moving in slow motion. To us, this ship is a trampoline. Let's make some noise." They reached the inner airlock of the Night Fang. Two Vitari sentries stood guarding the entrance, armed with sleek kinetic rifles. The aliens saw the massive yellow mechanical monstrosities approaching and immediately opened fire. The kinetic bolts slammed against Gallagher's caterpillar suit. The impact barely registered, pinging harmlessly off the 3 in thick. Industrial steel plating like pebbles thrown at a tank. "My turn," Gallagher said. He didn't fire his weapon. Exploiting the low gravity, Gallagher engaged his suit's forward thrusters and leaped. The 2-ton mechanical suit sailed through the air across the 20 FT gap, crashing down directly on top of the 2 Vitari guards. The reinforced boots of the exo-suit crushed the aliens instantly, their advanced armor completely useless against sheer, overwhelming mass. Alarms immediately began to wail throughout the dark, sleek corridors of the Night Fang. The ambient lighting shifted to a pulsating deep violet. "They know we're here," Ramirez said, stepping over the crushed sentries and revving his rotary saw. The blade hummed with a terrifying high-pitched screech. "Good," Gallagher replied, looking at a digital schematic of the alien ship he had downloaded from the airlock terminal. "The thermal weapons power routing flows through their central core 3 decks up. We go straight up." "There are no stairs or elevators here," Chief Henderson said, scanning the corridor, "just maintenance shafts. Our suits won't fit." "We don't need stairs," Gallagher said, raising his DeWalt plasma torch and pointing it directly at the ceiling. He ignited the tool, sending a blinding white-hot jet of localized plasma straight up. The alien floor plating bubbled and melted in seconds. "We make our own doors." On the bridge of the Night Fang, Shipmaster Vries stared at his tactical displays in absolute horror. The boarding action was supposed to be a flawless slaughter. The Vitari were the apex predators of the sector. They moved faster, struck harder, and possessed stealth technology that defied standard sensor arrays. But the telemetry feeding back from his ship's internal sensors made no logical sense. "Report." Rixis snarled, his forearms clenching the command console. "Why is the thermal weapon not fully charged? And why have we lost contact with Kalen's boarding party?" His science officer, trembling, tapped a series of glyphs on the holographic display. "Shipmaster, Kalen's vitals are flat or erratic. The prey vessel, they altered their internal gravity, and now the prey has boarded us." "Prey does not board a Vitari warship." Vries roared. "Activate the internal defense grids. Deploy the automated laser turrets in Corridor 7. "I have, Shipmaster," the officer replied, his mandibles clicking in sheer panic. "But the invaders, they are bypassing the labyrinth entirely. They are not walking down the corridors. They are cutting straight through the bulkheads, moving vertically." On the main screen, Vries watched the security feed. 4 massive yellow mechanical beasts were tearing through his ship. An automated laser turret dropped from the ceiling and fired a sustained beam at the lead invader. The beam struck the yellow armor, doing nothing but blackening the paint. The invader simply reached up with a massive hydraulic claw, grabbed the turret, and ripped it out of the ceiling with brutal, terrifying strength. "They are 50 m from the primary core," the tactical officer warned. "Send the Royal Guard. Vent the atmosphere in their sector," Rixis commanded. Down on Deck 2, Gallagher and his team smashed through another layer of decking, landing heavily in a wide circular holding chamber. The room was lined with energy barriers, and behind those barriers sat the real horror of the Vitari's trap. Dozens of emaciated, terrified humans, Tellarans and Centurions were huddled in the corners of the cages. They wore the tattered uniforms of the Horizon civilian transport. This wasn't just a lure. It was a larder. The Vitari had kept the survivors alive to feed on them slowly. As the massive caterpillar suits stomped into the room, the prisoners screamed, cowering away from the loud machinery. "Hold your fire," Gallagher ordered over the external speakers. He popped the faceplate of his suit, revealing his sweat-drenched human face to the prisoners. "We're from Redwood Stellar Freight. We're here to get you out." A collective sob of relief washed over the cages. But the moment was cut short as the blast doors at the far end of the room hissed open. A dozen Vitari royal guards poured in, wielding heavy plasma halberds and neurotoxin projectors. "Ramirez, O'Connor, break those energy barriers and get these people into our umbilical tube," Gallagher shouted, snapping his faceplate back down. "Henderson, with me. Clear the room." The Royal Guard charged. They were faster and better armored than the standard warriors, leaping across the low-gravity room with terrifying agility. One of the aliens hurled a neurotoxin grenade that exploded against Gallagher's chest plate in a cloud of green gas. Inside the suit, the 3MH hardened rebreather system didn't even register a drop in air quality. "My turn," Gallagher grunted. He stepped forward and swung his heavy hydraulic arm in a wide arc. The massive steel fist collided with a leaping Vitari guard midair. The sound of kit and shattering echoed over the alarms as the alien was swatted across the room, crashing into a bulkhead and crumpling into a lifeless heap. Henderson waded into the fray with his rotary saw. The high RPM industrial blade chewed through the alien plasma halberds, and the armor beneath them like wet tissue paper. The Vitari, used to fighting enemies who relied on shields and evasive tactics, had absolutely no defense against the sheer unyielding momentum of human heavy machinery. Within 2 minutes, the Royal Guard lay broken on the floor. "Prisoners are secured and moving to the Goliath," Chief Ramirez reported over the comms. "Good, Henderson, let's finish this. The bridge is right above us." Gallagher didn't bother using the plasma torch this time. He and Henderson synchronized their hydraulic servos, crouched, and unleashed the maximum thrust of their heavy suits. The two men launched themselves upward in the low gravity, smashing headfirst into the ceiling. The floor plates of the Vitari bridge buckled, groaned, and violently gave way. Shipmaster Vries was thrown off his feet as the center of his command deck exploded in a shower of sparks and shattered metal. Out of the smoke rose 2 towering yellow mechanical titans. "Fire!" Vraz screamed, discharging his personal plasma pistol at the lead suit. The bolt scorched the reinforced glass of Gallagher's canopy, but failed to penetrate. Gallagher stepped off the ruined floor plating, his heavy boots shaking the entire bridge. He walked directly toward the command console, ignoring the panicked, ineffectual fire of the bridge crew. Vries lunged forward, raising a superheated plasma blade to strike. Gallagher simply raised his hydraulic arm, catching the shipmaster by the throat. The machine's grip was absolute. Vries dropped his blade, his forearms clawing desperately at the cold steel, pinning him in the air. "Weapon controls," Gallagher demanded, his voice projecting as a terrifying mechanized boom through the suit's external speakers. "Shut it down," Vries choked, his mandibles clicking uselessly. "Henderson, tear the console apart," Gallagher ordered. Henderson stomped over to the central command pillar. Instead of trying to hack the alien interface, he raised his DeWalt plasma torch and cleaved the entire console in half, melting the primary power conduits leading to the forward weapon array. On the Goliath, Captain Miller watched the tactical display. The massive energy spike building in the alien ship abruptly flickered, died, and flatlined. "Target lock lost," Lewis reported, letting out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "The weapon is offline." Chief Gallagher signals the enemy bridge is secure. Miller slumped back in his command chair, a rare smile crossing his exhausted face. "Good work. Tell Gallagher to secure the prisoners and then hook a tow cable to the alien vessel's main drive. We aren't just saving the Horizon crew. We're taking this stealth ship back to Earth Command as a prize. Shipmaster Vries collapsed onto the melted, warped decking of his own command bridge, clutching his bruised throat. The violet emergency lights flickered, casting long, menacing shadows of the two massive caterpillar exo-suits that now dominated the room. Thomas Gallagher stood over the fallen alien commander, the hydraulic whine of his mechanical armor humming a steady, intimidating rhythm. "Zip-tie him," Gallagher ordered over the external speakers. Henderson stepped forward, his suit's heavy manipulators surprisingly deft as he produced a bundle of heavy-duty industrial polymers. Within seconds, Vraz found his forearms pinned brutally behind his back, the reinforced plastics biting into his kit and shell. For a species that prided itself on being the apex predators of the Orion Spur, the indignity was absolute. Vries stared up at the massive hazard yellow machine, his secondary eyes wide with a mixture of terror and utter bewilderment. What military caste are you?" He wheezed in broken translated galactic standard. "Your armor, your kinetic weapons. What elite vanguard of your empire did we ensnare?" Inside his suit, Gallagher let out a dry, rasping laugh. He popped his faceplate, revealing a tired, sweat-streaked face covered in grease. "Military buddy, I'm a Union foreman. The guy who just tied you up is a Class B orbital mechanic. We aren't an elite vanguard. We haul rocks." Vries's mandibles parted in silent, uncomprehending shock. If these were mere laborers, what did their warriors look like? The Vitari had not lured soft prey. They had willingly tethered themselves to a species forged on a nightmare of a death world where even the civilians possessed enough kinetic fury to dismantle a warship. Back on the Goliath, the crisis was shifting from a tactical combat operation to a monumental engineering problem. "Captain, Chief Engineer," Rebecca Shaw's voice crackled over the bridge intercom. "The boarding parties are neutralized. Gallagher has the alien. Bridge locked down, and the civilian prisoners from the horizon are being escorted to our medical bay. But we have a major logistical issue. The chemical slag they used to harpoon us has completely cured. The Night Fang is permanently welded to our starboard primary bulkhead." Captain David Miller stared at the optical feeds. The brutalist wedge-shaped Goliath was physically conjoined with the sleek black dagger-like Vitari Raider. "Can we cut them loose?" Miller asked. "Not without specialized orbital shipyards," Shaw replied. "If I use a high-yield cutting charge, I risk severing our own main life support arteries. We're stuck with them. But there is a silver lining. I'm currently aboard their engineering deck. Their tech is weird, mostly organic metallic hybrids, but physics is physics. I've hooked a Fluke Corporation high-voltage diagnostic scanner into their main drive matrix. Their stealth engines are offline, but their hyperdrive core is completely intact." "You want to jump with them attached," Miller deduced, a daring plan forming in his mind. "I don't just want to, Captain. We have to," Shaw explained. "The Goliath's Farnsworth drives cannot generate a subspace bubble large enough to encompass both ships on our own. If we jump, the sheer drag of their mass outside the bubble will tear us in half. But if I slave their hyperdrive to our navigation computer, we can synchronize the jump. We create an overlapping subspace bubble and ride it all the way back to Earth." "Do it," Miller commanded. "Foster, plot a direct course for the solar system. Priority military lanes. Lewis, open a continuous wideband broadcast. I want Earth Command to know exactly what is dropping out of hyperspace before we get there so they don't blow us to dust." For the next 4 hours, the crew of the Goliath worked feverishly. Mechanics using Milwaukee high-torque impact drills and heavy hydraulic spreaders secured the internal bulkheads while Shaw performed a masterclass of jury rigging, splicing human copper conduits directly into Vitari crystalline power nodes. Finally, the synchronization was complete. Drives linked spooling to maximum capacity. Foster announced from the navigation terminal. "Jumping in 3, 2, 1. Mark." The fabric of space tore open and the two fused vessels. One, a battered titanium cargo hauler. The other, a captured state-of-the-art alien stealth raider, hurled themselves into the dark stream of faster-than-light travel. 2 weeks later, the SA system proximity alarms blared across the United Systems naval defense grid. a massive spatial anomaly was detected, emerging near the Kuiper Belt checkpoint. 3 heavy cruisers, including the flagship UNS Lexington, immediately moved to intercept, their weapon systems tracking the unknown radar signature. Admiral Nathan Reynolds stood on the bridge of the Lexington, staring at his tactical display. Identify that incoming mass. It has the transponder of a Redwood Stellar freight hauler, but the mass profile is entirely wrong. It's too big. Visual confirmation coming through now, Admiral, his comms officer stated. The image that appeared on the main screen left the seasoned military bridge in absolute silence. The Goliath drifted into standard space, heavily scarred but entirely operational. Physically welded to its side, dragging like a conquered beast on a leash, was an alien stealth vessel of completely unknown origin. A radio transmission crackled through the military channels. United Systems Fleet. This is Captain David Miller of the commercial hauler Goliath. We are returning from the Kepler sector with 3 million tons of palladium, 94 rescued civilian hostages, and 1 slightly used alien warship, requesting a docking vector and immediate medical assistance for the survivors. Admiral Reynolds blinked, a slow smile spreading across his face. Goliath, this is Admiral Reynolds. Docking vector transmitted. I think you're going to have a lot of paperwork to fill out, Captain. We'll handle the paperwork, Admiral Miller replied coolly. Just make sure you have the salvage claims adjusters from Lloyd's of London ready at the dock. Under deep space maritime law, my crew just claimed full salvage rights to an intact alien stealth dreadnought. I believe we are due a rather substantial payout. The Vitari came looking for easy prey in the dark. Instead, they encountered human industry, human gravity, and human defiance. They learned the hard way that humanity didn't need advanced military armadas to defend themselves. Give a human an exo-suit, a rivet gun, and a paycheck to protect, and they will conquer the stars. And that is exactly why you never try to ambush a human cargo crew. What the Vitari thought was easy prey turned out to be the absolute worst mistake of their predatory lives. If you loved this tale of industrial-grade human defiance, smash that like button, share this video with your fellow Deathworlders, and make sure to subscribe to the channel for more epic sci-fi stories. What everyday tool would you bring to an alien fight? Let us know in the comments below.